Thank you very much. We now have a panel on State Roundup Policy and Strategy. I'm your facilitator, Mike Ritchie. I'm the MD of MRA Consulting Group. I get the pleasure of introducing and throwing up a bunch of controversial issues for you for about 10 minutes, and then I'll invite the panellists up. I'll ask a few Dorothy Dixer questions of them, and then we're opening it up to the floor. You'll have at least, hopefully, an hour of questions, so please think about your questions, write them down, and throw a few curlies at the state reps. So broad kind of sweep for those of you who are new to waste or just want a bit of background. Waste is growing at a compound average growth rate of 4.8% across the country. We're very, very good at generating waste. About 2/3 of that is per capita consumption growth, and about 1/3 of it is population growth driven. So we're all consuming more and bigger flat screen TVs. On the very positive side, if you look over a 20-year horizon, we generated 22 million tonnes 20 years ago. We're now generating about 53 million tonnes. By the way, interpret this picture as waste is like a river. It flows downhill to the cheapest price. No matter what you do, if it's cheap, it's going there. And that is a reality statement that all councillors, all policy people need to understand. If it's cheap at a landfill, that's where the vast bulk of it is going, in spite of a few beautiful initiatives and great little projects. Waste flows downhill to the cheapest price. You'll see that our recycling rate, on the other hand, has grown massively, and that's testimony to the people in this room, to the industry, to councillors, to state governments who have driven the policy settings to get the waste out. And if you'd been at this conference 20 years ago, the conference was all about how do we run better landfills, how do we, should we in fact be landfilling organics and capturing the gas, recycling's expensive, let's not do too much of it. And in 20 years, we have seen a major sea change towards circular economy, resource recovery, and that's, again, testimony to the people in this room. So we've now grown our recycling rate up to 61%, but notice at the bottom, the absolute amount of waste going to landfill hasn't changed in 20 years. We're still landfilling about 20 million tonnes. So if we want to actually get that down, we need some more innovation. We need to accelerate the rate of reform to make sure that we actually capture those residual streams that are a bit harder to recycle and get them out. Another home truth, all recycling in Australia is subsidised by someone except for metal and cardboard, by and large. So mobile phones are subsidised, e-waste is subsidised, curbside recycling is subsidised. It's subsidised by you and I ratepayers in a gate fee we pay to MRF. So all recycling except metal and cardboard, by and large, is subsidised by someone. So the question then is, what's a reasonable additional subsidy to get these additional materials out of the waste stream? It's going to cost money. What is our willingness to pay? Our economy is growing happily, 27 years of uninterrupted economic growth, but waste is growing at about twice the rate. Waste generation is twice the rate. So we have been singly unsuccessful in uncoupling economic growth from waste generation. Put it another way, the blue line at the top is waste generation, the green line is recycling, and waste to landfill is the red line. And if we want to get that down, we need to invest harder, faster into infrastructure and services at scale. Not dismissing the great little projects that people are doing around Australia, but we're landfilling 20 million tonnes. If we want to get that down, we need big bits of kit doing stuff. FOGO programs at council level, right down to mattress recycling, but we need, foremost, big bits of kit processing mixed waste streams. On the successes, 61% recovery rate. Waste collection in Australia is incredibly cost effective and incredibly efficient. Testimony to local government in particular and to the waste industry. Remember that 2/3 of all waste to landfill is commercial waste. 1/3 is local government waste. We have reframed the debate in the last 20 years towards the kinds of articulations of circular economy that you hear. But the rate of change is too slow. So now a quick treatise on, a quick run through what the different states have done. So I say the rate of change is too slow. I'm going to run through this and then say this is the things I think we need to do more quickly, and then you're going to ask all the hard questions of the panellists. So we have state strategies, we have state targets everywhere. You can see the performance of the actual is the coloured bar and the target is the top of the line. And you can see different states have very different targets, very different outcomes. We are good on some material streams. MSW is tracking pretty well. Commercial waste, on the other hand, not so well. C&D, heavy, we do pretty well in C&D. C&D is our best performing sector by far. So very different market signals, very different strategies at the state. Back in 2010, the National Waste Policy was first developed, and it did a very useful matrix which said this is the programs, interventions in each state. You can see it there. I won't bore you with the details. So Mike, in his usual fashion, decided, well, I'll do it again in 2018-19 just to stir the pot a bit. And that's Mike's interpretation, being very generous of what we see now in the regulatory framework across the country. So to their credit, every state now has a strategy that says the ship of state is going towards circular economy and resource recovery. They didn't until quite recently. It's rational for a state government to say, no, we're going to just stick with very cheap landfills that are well run. It's a rational economic policy, but now we've seen everybody say circular economy is the way we want to go strategically, and they've all adopted that. Targets, bit of a mix. Levies, bit of a mix, and then it starts to get pretty disparate. The first and biggest one is the impact of the landfill levy. It does all the heavy lifting for resource recovery and recycling in this country. New South Wales has the highest levy at $140.20, and we're seeing that in Queensland we're now introducing a levy of $75 a tonne from the 1st of July. And the result of those levies is the landfill pricing that you see on this slide. That's what you and I pay when we go to a landfill. Very disparate, and obviously sends very different market signals to the market as to whether to recycle or not. And remember that all waste will go to landfill unless there's a price signal or a regulatory signal to stop it going there. All right, so if you're faced with a $40 landfill price in Brisbane, and it costs you $330 to landfill in Sydney and $100 to get it there, guess where the waste is going? And we currently transport 1.2 million tonnes of waste from Sydney to Brisbane by road and rail because of the arbitrage of landfill levies. The Queensland Government is trying to fix that with its own levy, but that in and of itself is not enough to fix interstate arbitrage of waste. We need some other mechanism. And that's the landfill levies, and to the credit of the New South Wales Government, the South Australian Government and now the Queensland Government, with Vic and South Australia also in the pack. It's a very good outcome and it needs to proceed and continue if we're keen about getting resource recovery to be meaningful. Bans across landfills, regulatory signals, bit of a mixed bag. Nothing particularly happening in that space except the e-waste ban coming in Victoria. Starting 1st of July. China National Sword, another area of some action, more action in some states than others. Councillors in the room, the 47 million, when I stood up here last year and talked about the 47 million from New South Wales, a couple of councillors went, yes, but it's not new money. I accept that point. It's there for reference that what you see is other states have done less and the federal government has done little. South Australia has done a little bit. Oh, and by the way, the important thing there, oh, no, forget it. God almighty, where am I going? No, go away. How do I go backwards? All right, here we go. Connie, help. Right, someone help me. All credibility out the door with one slide. Gone. I'm a professional. So landfill levies, where do we get to? Right, landfill levies. So, a lot of movement going on, but not enough, not fast enough, depending on your sense of the rate of change that we need. Landfill bans, bit of a mixed bag. China. ACOR wrote a very interesting report, which Quick Declaration we were involved with, which said if you want to de-risk curbside recycling in Australia, you actually only need to invest about $130 million once for capital refurb. Now, the landfill levies across the country raise about $1 billion a year, a little bit more than $1 billion a year. So it's a tiny one-off number. The question is, why aren't we just doing it? Right? Excellent question. And that report's on the website, on the ACOR website. So a couple of other quick initiatives that are going on around the country. Process engineered fuel. We see processing starting to emerge as an alternative to energy from waste because of the difficulty of getting approvals. So Victoria, ACT, South Australia, processing residual high calorific waste into bales and exporting it for thermal use in cement kilns in Asia. Product development, pull-through, getting a market pull to get this stuff happening. Which states are actually pulling through recyclables, buying, preferencing glass, sand in road base, etc. Very patchy, very weak. Plastic bags, you'd think that would be easy. Most states doing it now, but a couple of holdouts. Container deposit scheme, big change in the last 5 years, really starting to roll out there, but a couple of states still laggards. And onto my last couple of slides, data. I'm a consultant, so data is important to me. New South Wales EPA put out the State of the Environment report 3 weeks ago, a month ago, using 2014-15 data. Now, we're trying to get billions of dollars of investment in infrastructure, and investors come to us and say, give us good data. And we say, well, there just isn't good data across the country, but worse in some states than others. And this is the kind of stuff we get at the federal level. The methods used by the Australian government for categorising data are not always the same as those used by the states, and figures presented may differ from the state reports. Now, we're a small country. There's 25 million of us. Surely we can report a consistent data set that it can at least be aggregated at a level that says MSWC and ICD and our clients, investors, whatever, can actually make rational economic decisions. And even it goes so far, Gail mentioned this yesterday, we now have 3 different levels of waste generation in the country, introducing this concept of core waste and then adding fly ash and adding hazardous waste on top of that. Now, surely we can come to a consistent set of definitions. So my last slide before I introduce the panel, can't we just focus on a couple of key actions, aligning the strategies and the targets, getting the economic and regulatory signals right that actually make a difference, not diminishing the projects that everyone is involved with, but we need some broad, hard-hitting instruments like Europe to actually make this stuff happen, to rebuild the circular economy. Circular economy is not some idea, it's actually changing the economy. That is hard. You need good, big signals to make that happen. It's not going to happen because we come to a conference and talk about the circular economy. We need actually instruments that drive behaviour change, and they're the kinds of instruments that will do it, proven around the world. We need to focus on infrastructure, and we need consistent and timely data. My last slide, and particularly if you're like me and are concerned that the UN might be right in terms of having 12 years to prevent 1.5 degree climate change, if they're right, then there is a massive sense of urgency that we need. And that's what's missing in the debate at the moment around the strategies and policies the government are producing are slow. They're far too slow if you believe that climate change is real. And the waste industry alone can abate up to 60 million tonnes of emissions. That's 10% of Australia's emissions profile. That's half of the Paris commitment in this room. Easy, relatively cheap, we know what to do. The 3 things we need to do are there: recover the embodied energy of recycling, just get more recyclables out of landfill, divert the organics and get those back out into compost, back on farms, which we need for a whole lot of other reasons, and capture the methane from our existing landfill stock. Not difficult, not expensive, we need to get on and do it. That's me. Thank you.